Good to be here today. I could just say, let's make his school and put it all over Georgia and be done with it, and then we're all done. But in all seriousness, that's the kind of thing we need a heck of a lot more of. So I'm going to talk about a few things today on the education front. I was privileged to be appointed by Governor Deal to the Education Reform Commission he did the past year, where he told us to think boldly about redoing public education, especially on the funding side, and it does blend into a lot of the school choice. So we came up with recommendations related to changing our funding model, which right now is very school and personnel focused, called QBE, written in the 80s, to a student-based formula where the money is allocated based on student characteristics. So a third grader who's special ed with this kind of needs and would get X amount of money. There's waiting for poverty. There's waiting for English as a second language, things of that nature. And I think it's very important on the school choice front because you're taking the money more towards a student-based thing, which is where it belongs. That actually helps enable in the future other school choice things in the future once you get the formula to more of a student-based thing. Plus, it just makes a heck of a lot more sense. There was also a recommendation that you probably read a little bit in the press about changing the way that teachers in the public schools are compensated. Right now, all teachers are paid the same based on years of service and degree. So the very best teacher in the school with 5 years and a bachelor's who teaches AP physics makes the exact same amount of money as the worst PE teacher with 5 years and a bachelor's degree. So clearly that's not an ideal model. There was a lot of really good suggestions for how to add different things to the compensation. Merit pay was one of them, though if you read our 85-page report, the merit pay was like 2 sentences, but it caught sort of fire with the teachers, and we had a huge pushback from the teacher and public education community, and that for other variety of reasons, the governor has decided to push those recommendations as far as legislation into 2017. So I'm a little disappointed in that. We did a lot of good work. There's a lot of really good things buried in there. I'm going to bring up some things that are more school choice related that are in that report. One thing I think is school choice related, I think is one of my favorite recommendations, though Kelly would agree with me, recommendation to move to competency-based testing. And that's kind of what Mike is doing in his school. When you do, instead of the end of the year big giant standardized test where you shut the building down, all the kids have heart attacks and panic and the teachers hate it, and we have this one gigantic test that the smartest 7th grader takes and the weakest 7th grader takes. And the 7th grader who happens to be in 9th grade math is going to take that same test as a 7th grader who's in remedial elementary math. So that's the whole factory model of education that we need to blow up. So moving to competency-based testing means you take those testings and you break it up into modules that show certain areas of learning, and you give it to them at the time that they master those competencies, which is something very well done with technology and blended learning. And that actually is a huge, I think, enabler of getting us out of the 1916 model of education. So that's one of my favorite recommendations in the report. Hasn't got as much press, but I think that's a little secret sauce in there that if we can really move that. And the good news is the new federal law replacing No Child Left Behind, which just passed a month or so ago, finally is going to take some of the federal handcuffs off on the way we do testing and the way we do accountability. And now the state hopefully should be able to innovate and do much better. We did have a school choice committee on the Education Reform Commission. Ironically enough, I was not on that committee, but they did a lot of really good work. They had several recommendations, and because of the controversial nature of school choice, as you all know, in the political sphere, they only had one recommendation of the subcommittee, which was to form a student scholarship organization that's low-income oriented. This recommendation then went to the full commission and lost by 1 vote, and we had a revote and it lost by 1 vote again. A little bit surprising. Thought that was going to get a recommendation from the commission, but it is something that a lot of us still support. It was one of the ideas from the governor's policy team, and for that reason, I've picked that up as an issue that I'm going to be introducing a bill probably today, maybe tomorrow, depending on a few timing things, to do a low-income student scholarship organization. An SSO, which we already have an SSO here in the state, which is where you get a tax credit for donating to a student scholarship organization. That organization then turns around and gives scholarships for kids to attend private, religious, or whatever school of their choice. The one we have today is open to all kids without means for income. It's got a $57 or $58 million cap. We went well over $100 million of subscriptions to it this year. So again, It's way oversubscribed. There's way too few time to talk about the very complicated and unusual politics around this particular issue, but it is a very interesting political issue. Many attempts have been made to raise the cap over the past few years without a lot of success. And one thing that we believe that the politics is going to be easier instead of expanding that cap is to go ahead and to move on a low-income based student scholarship organization. It would be open to corporations and to private individuals to donate to this. Right now, the corporations can't participate in the existing program because all the money is taken out by people camping on the website that a CFO of a company is not going to be able to do. And the other reason that the new program will get more corporate money is a lot of charitable corporate money where they want to donate to things, and to them donating to a low-income kid trying to get out of a failing school into a private school which they can't afford is an easier sell to a charitable sort of thinking corporation than perhaps a program that might be used to send a more well-to-do person's kid to Westminster or to Pace or something like that. So there's another thing that I think is awesome about the low-income SSO, which is that when you're doing the other private scholarships money, hey, when that kid comes out of the public school, the state saves money. But when you don't have means tested, it's really hard to say, would that kid have really gone, would that Westminster kid really have gone to a public school if he didn't have the scholarship? It's hard to say. But on the low-income side, you can say with almost certainty that 90-95% of those kids are going to be in a public school if they don't get the scholarship. So then you start doing the math saying the state is paying $4,000-ish per kid, and if you end up getting a $4,000 tax credit towards that kid, guess how much money the state is cost? Costs nothing. And so it becomes a much easier sell, in my opinion, on the budget math to say, no, if we do a $25 million student scholarship for low income, we are not going to put a $25 million hole in the state budget, because on the other side of the ledger, when we pay out the $7 billion we pay to local systems to fund their local kids, there's going to be $25 million less money appropriated down the line. I do support the existing scholarship program. I would love to increase the cap, but again, time does not allow me to go into all the intricate politics around that program, but maybe we can work on that as well. But I'm going to be working on that issue this session. Again, it was almost by one vote a recommendation of the Reform Commission, but especially since it's my last year, I've got to give it a whirl while I still can. I'm also the #2 sponsor on the Education Savings Account bill. I'm sure Hunter will talk about that. I'll leave that to him. The #1 sponsor in the House, Mark Hamilton, he's also from my county, Forsyth County, resigned to a private sector job in Nashville that he couldn't turn down. So I would love to advance that bill. Again, the politics there are complicated. I'll leave that to Hunter. And I'll close with I'd love to hear what Mike is saying. I'm a huge digital learning person. I think we're moving to a time where, especially at the high school level, the whole thing should be choice. The idea that at high school you go to one building at 8 o'clock and you take 7 periods as the bell rings and you move through some factory thing, and really that whole thing should be blown up. There's so many more options now. We're doing a lot with Move On and Ready, getting kids into technical colleges. You know, maybe they don't actually go to the technical college, but there's a great program over there that they take that, or they take online classes, or they go to the charter school over here for a couple days with a special program and come back. The whole thing should be customized, and there's no reason that we should think in the old model of just straight assignment. And digital learning, as Mike pointed out, is a great tool for that, and that's what I've worked on the most in the past 6 years in the legislature, has been getting funding from the state. We built a lot of bricks and mortar around the state. We're actually higher than most states as far as spending and capital on schools, trying to divert at least some of that money to technology, because that's the better long-term investment. But we'll be back. I do actually want to stay involved in policy. Hopefully Kelly will let me poke around, but I have really loved being in the legislature, and I really do hate having to leave. I really enjoy policy. I really enjoy working education, but the private sector and my business partners and my wife have different opinions. So anyway, appreciate everybody, and I will work on school choice till March the 24th, which is my last night. Thanks.